So guys, I'm out here with the pastor of Mount Olive Baptist Church and the owner-operator of Rosie's Place, Mr. Braylon Harris. How you doing, Braylon?
It's always good to see you, Mr. DT. Always good to see you.
So Braylon, I'm not going to waste your time, brother. We'll get
Absolutely.
into it.
Yeah.
What exactly is Rosie's Place?
Rosie's Place began basically towards the middle and end of last year as a concept that was designed to ensure that individuals that came in to our community with various different skill levels, whether it be journeymen, welders, pipe fitters, to assist in the economic expansion that is getting ready to go on to the tune of about 28,000 transient and temporary people. So it began as one that would be set aside specifically for women that were going to be coming into the area. We've connected with everyone from the National Association of Women in Construction to a group called NEW, which is the Non-Traditional Employment for Women. And that idea has continued to expand because as we go along now, the various different projects are several months behind. That number of 28,000 continues to grow. And so just like anyone else, we've responded to the market to ensure that we're in the best position possible to support Southwest Louisiana during this economic expansion. So just recently, I'm sure as you've heard and everyone else has heard, we began to expand that facility. We went from about the 500 number to a little over 2,800 now. Now we have at least the possibility of maximizing our facility to ensure that the impact on the permanent residents here in Southwest Louisiana is felt as small as possible by making sure we've built an organized community for these people so they don't overrun our communities that we already have.
So if there's no Rosie's Place, what's the negative effect of not having a man camp?
Wow. You know, there's so many. We've had some great opportunities to talk to the mayor of a place called Williston, North Dakota, where there was a huge boom there in, I believe it's called the Bacon Shale or whatever the case might be there. That town grew probably about 10 times within a couple years. Crime rates kind of went up and different things along those lines until they start organizing communities like this for the temporary workers to ensure that these places were an extension of the workforce and things like that. So any incidents that happened on those temporary housing facilities were just like they happened at the workplace, and they were able to kind of mitigate a lot of the issues that they were having. But communities like Southwest Louisiana could suffer in the event that we do not provide enough temporary housing. One of the biggest things that concerns me, and as you mentioned earlier, that I am pastor of Mount Olive Baptist Church, and so the community is very important. I think if you check the track record of Mount Olive since I've been there, we've been able to do some really exciting things. Definitely have had the community at heart, and in this idea, we still have the community at heart. Because one of the major things that happens very early on in the onset of an onslaught of individuals coming in is that people start opting out of Section 8. So people who own homes that have the Section 8 clearance start opting out because now they can get $500 per room. Or individuals want to bunk up in rooms, now they get $1,000 per room. So people start pulling out of those programs, which means now those housings are not available for those who some of the less fortunate among us. And so these individuals come in, take those homes. Those individuals now are forced into a market that is now already elevated. So now where they might have been paying $50, $100, $200 with the subsidy on top of it, now they're forced into a market that is already exacerbated. And so now you're talking about someone that was used to paying $50 to $200. Now that person is trying to figure out how we're going to pay $700. Many of these families, of course, have children. Now you've got to get a bigger facility. Now you're talking about $1,000 a month. And so that is a major issue and that we did not want to see happen in our community. And so by taking 2,800 potentially individuals into this design, again, organized community, we are ensuring that those 2,800 don't overrun the community, force individuals out of maybe Section 8 homes or homes they're currently renting. We're already seeing that in Southwest Louisiana, rents escalating, and that's 2,800 people we've taken out of that market, and hopefully 28 people that we can keep in their homes here in Southwest Louisiana.
Now people would say, all these hotels we got coming up in Lake Charles, why don't you just go to a hotel and stay there? Why not?
No, absolutely. And my goodness, are they building hotels? The issue is they're building hotels because they have not approved enough of the temporary housing facilities. The issue with that is, all of us have visited cities like a certain size of Houston, certain size of New Orleans, even right there, Shreveport, things along those lines where communities came in and they built a lot of permanent structures like apartment complexes, like hotels and things along those lines. And when that temporary group goes out, that facility is still there underutilized. And so now what used to be during the height of the expansion, a $200 a room night, now becomes a $20 an hour type of situation. And we know what happens in places like that. And so what we will be left with is an overuse of permanent buildings. And then at the backside of this, in 7 to 10 years, when the temporary workers pull out, now we have places where things like drugs and different things along those lines can now really grow and have a festering point that we don't want in our community. The great thing about this is that they come in as they are needed, and they leave out as they're no longer needed. So this particular community that we're working on building, it will not go from 0 to 2,800. It'll go from 0 to maybe 300, then to 500 as it's needed. It'll go, and then it'll come down the same way as they pull off maybe the welders. Now it'll go down. If they pull off the pipe fitters, it'll come down, and then eventually that site will be left as it was, and then infrastructure will be left in place.
So you guys are not just opening it up with 2,800 people.
Correct, exactly. 9 times out of 10, many of the contractors that we've already talked to, they are looking at a scaled approach. And I know you work at the plant and everything along those lines. You don't just go full force into a turnaround or whatever case may be. You scale it in and you scale it back. And so that's exactly how these various different contractors are looking at doing it. Therefore, that's exactly how we plan on constructing the facility, scaling up, scaling back. So
what's the history of man camps across the country? Typically, when a man camp working village comes into a community, how is the community affected?
There's plenty of ways that the community can be affected. One, and there are pros and there are cons. Okay, but for the most part, individuals who stay in man camps, individuals who stay in worker villages, are individuals who have left their families. And DT, you have to understand this, that what if the market, the petrochemical industry here in Southwest Louisiana was to dry up, and the only way for you to provide for your sons and daughters would be to travel across the country and go to work somewhere else on a temporary basis. You would not go there to play around. You would not be there, not even necessarily because you wanted to be there. It would be out of the necessity of providing for your family. So you're there to work hard. You're there to make sure that your family is provided for. You're there to make sure that every time you get a chance, you get on the plane, you get on the road to get back home to see your family, kiss your wife and children, come back and make that hard-earned living that they sent you down here to do, to provide that education maybe, to provide that that home maybe that might be in risk of foreclosure because you've lost your job because the local plants in your area have shut down. So these are good people. Genuinely good people. We have to ask ourselves the question: if you had 2,800 Conoco workers, Citgo workers, or one of our local industries here, and we took 2,800 of them, how many of them would 2,800 people that work at that facility, that go to work every day, that have gone through the rigors of the TWIC card, that have gone through the background checks, the drug testing, how many of them would be bad actors? A portion, of course, but a very small portion of hard-working, well-vetted individuals are going to be a negative impact on the community. The biggest thing that happens in the community is the peripheral. Things along the lines of businesses. If you check out Williston, North Dakota, the amount of business that was developed, everyone was able to decide what they wanted to do and how they were able to assist these people from a services standpoint. And everything, any services that could be provided, was able to have a lucrative run during that particular economic expansion.
Now, you're known as Pastor Braylon Harris, right?
Absolutely.
And you're associated with Rosie's Camp. So is this a church project?
This is not the church's project. The way this is designed, DT, is that about 3 or 4 years ago, the church, of course, we're right there on 600 North 7th Street. Nice building, but it's been there for about 75 years. We built a brand new building about 20 years ago in the back. The Sidney Fondo multi-purpose facility is there in the back. But we noticed that our children, when they walked out the side door, were right in the street. When they walked in the front door, they were right out the street. When they walked out even the new facility, they were less than 10 yards from the street. And we said, you know, as our church was growing and children were kind of bounding around the place, we said we can do better. We've got to do better. We started looking for property, and eventually it was not the first property we looked at, but eventually we settled on about 37 acres right at the corner of I-10 and 210, also on Opelousas. There's about 1,000 feet on Opelousas, 1,000 feet on I-10, 1,000 feet on 210. Just a wonderful location, had been wooded. I don't believe there's ever been a development there. And so we purchased that piece of property, and we believe God, that God will provide some kind of way for us to be a blessing to our community. We knew as a small church here in the community, we would not need personally 37 acres, but we purchased it all with the point that God would have us to do something for our community, be able to allow us to do something for our community that would be a blessing to our community. We did not know that Rosie's then would come into fruition. In fact, the economic expansion talk was just beginning when we did this. But then since then, what we've been able to do, and it actually started as a ministry idea. I took a day off and sat around and said, what needs to be done? What can be done for individuals as they come in? And as we began to develop that, we saw that there was a need for one of these camps to be done not so much corporately, not from someone from Baton Rouge or from New York City coming down doing this, but why couldn't we do one self-produced? Why couldn't we do one that really rolls out the red carpet here for Southwest Louisiana? And again, originally it was strictly women. Now it has expanded. And we're not ashamed of that, the possibility of expansion. And let me just address that very quickly. You know, we sat back and we done a moral check and kind of a moral application for ourselves. And we said, you know, if we have the ability to have 2,800 rooms, and then we say, no, we're only going to take 500 women. And so there's an additional 2,300 men out there that are now vying for homes and rental units in the community. And let's say those 2,300 men that are vying for homes in the community, rent homes, Section 8 homes, whatever they may be, are now putting out women with children. And so we said, wait, are we defeating our purpose if we only say we're going to house 500 women, but 2,300 women get put out of Section 8 or get put out of their rental units or apartments or whatever case may be? And we said, wait, that does not, the moral compass, though it's long bends towards justice, it doesn't weigh out in this situation. And so we said, you know, if we can do as many women as we possibly can, but it also be able to save as many of our permanent residents as we possibly can, that's going to be the greatest good. And so that's what we aim to do. But it is not Mount Olive is only leasing the 20 acres. There's 20 acres available. Mount Olive is retaining 14. In actuality, Mount Olive retains the entire 37 plus acres, but they're leasing 20 acres to this project that is being put together by Kingdom Logistics. Now, let me address the Kingdom Logistics.
The next question.
The next question, Kingdom Logistics. Kingdom Logistics, as you can see, the surname of that is Kingdom. And so that is also a company that I was able to go out and establish. Now, I cannot help that I have a business degree from McNeese State University that I am proud of, that I've got to pay off, and that I need to apply, as we would like all of our children to apply the degrees that our parents have worked hard to supply us with. And so I established this company with a few others in our community, all right here, homegrown individuals, came together and made sure that we could be able to put in position, in our community in position to lead in some effort here in Southwest Louisiana. And so we went to the church, we've leased the 20 acres, we've coupled with a national partner by the name of Lone Tree USA that currently runs 6 camps, all the way ranging from Canada all the way to South America. Unbelievable people. They'll be here with us all week next week. Really, actually this week, this week they'll be here with us this week. Really excited about it, but it's not a Mount Olive project. Mount Olive simply purchased the land and is leasing it to Kingdom Logistics.
So with that set up, let's talk about taxes.
Absolutely.
Is Kingdom Logistics paying taxes on this property?
Absolutely.
As well as Lone Tree?
Correct. Now, the way this works is that traditionally, and again, we have the Southwest Louisiana Law Center finalizing this idea, but from our research, what we have discovered is that, again, the church is, in and of itself, a nonprofit organization, and all of us understand that. But when the church divvies into business affairs, such as leases and rents and things along those lines, if both parties that are involved in that contract are not nonprofit, then that becomes a for-profit. That becomes a for-profit contractor or a venture, correct? And because Kingdom Logistics is not a nonprofit, nor is Lone Tree a nonprofit, that means even the lease itself, because one of the parties involved in it is not a nonprofit, becomes a for-profit or becomes a for-profit entity or agreement, and therefore there will be property taxes, etc., engaged in it. One of the things that we have, just to go a little bit farther than that, because property taxes go, of course, to making sure that all the community assets and needs are there that are needed. I can assure you that, one, we're already going to be making $45 to $55 million investments in facilities and infrastructure, a little over $1 million just in sewage and water, upgrading that, increasing the capacity of the Mallet Cove Junction by roughly about 300,000 gallons per day that will allow every everything to expand, not only here on Opelousas Street, but all down 397, all the way almost to where Highway 14 curves and heads out towards Cameron Parish. And so that whole system will be upgraded. And we're excited about that because that allows a ton of growth between here and there, right here in our community, in our neighborhood.
Now, mentioning those things, like the vote was cast last week to approve you guys going forward with the next phase of your project.
Right.
So a lot of people who contacted me hadn't really heard about it or maybe forgot about it. The last time they heard it was 500 women coming, and that was it. But you guys are at 2,800, which is way bigger,
Correct.
plus retail aspects to it. So how did you guys get here? Like when it comes to DOT or like DOTD, zoning and planning, like you guys didn't pop up overnight. This was like the first vote for this property, was it?
Correct. No. We've been through quite a bit of processes, if you can imagine, of what it takes to do a project of this magnitude and this size. You cannot do a project like this in the closet. They force you to do it out in the open. And so even when we had 500, there were 3 sets of meetings. We had to go to planning and zoning to get the property from agriculture to industrial. We then had to go to the police jury to again get it agricultural to industrial. Then we had to go back to planning and zoning to get a residential exception. We did that at 500. We're going through that exact same process again as we expand to 2,800. Police jurors process in that is, again, you've got to fill out an application, pay a fee. That information is then circulated to various police jurors or whomever it may be. They are then invited to various, sometimes closed meetings, and then there's these public meetings. The road signage is usually put out at least 2 weeks ahead of the project. And also, of course, we were encouraged by our police juror there in the area to go out into the community, knock on some doors. We reached out to some of the communities. This is one of the areas that I think we could have done a better job. We could have expanded our radius. I've noticed now through the recourse of listening to individuals, watching your Facebook post, which was a dynamic Facebook post to say the very least, and thank you for doing that. It allows us to see what the community is seeing, feeling, and be able to hear that and be able to adjust our plans to make sure their issues are addressed.
People feel like this was snuck in on them. Like, this is North Lake Charles, nobody's watching. Nobody else wanted in Sulphur, Martha, anywhere else. We want to sneak this in on North Lake Charles. Is that the case?
Well, I can tell you this, and this is a very candid answer. There are individuals that have tried it all over the parish. They've tried it up towards the Quincy, they've tried it in Sulphur, they've tried it down even in Cameron Parish, they've tried it in Monesville, they've tried it in Westlake, they've tried it here in Lake Charles, they tried it out on 397. And the issue is not so much, yes, the communities have reacted in various different ways. There's still one in Corliss. Corliss community came out, they still have one. Monesville has one, 397 has one, 108 or 109 has one. They're in Sulphur.